Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be doing a little bit of a box office update for the Eternals and how the news media might actually finally be waking up, or at the very least, they are trying to set the stage for when this film, in my own opinion, inevitably fails to recoup its investment, which, remember, it needs to make $500 million worldwide in order to do so, to make up for production, marketing cost, and the fact that the studio only gets about 60% or so of the entire box office accumulation. Before going further into this bit of news, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching on Odyssey, smash the rumble button if you're watching over there, and also make sure you're subscribed to the channel with the bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So this from Deadline's box office: Eternals seeing a possible $70+ million opening weekend. Why this is a wake-up call for the MCU. Red Notice box office unreported. Yes, indeed, a wake-up call for the MCU. The news media is either finally waking up, or they're trying to cover themselves, or they're trying to do a bit of playing it both ways, basically saying, hey, here's what's going to happen, or here's how it's going to be if the film is not that successful, and it's going to come down to the film itself, or, hey, it still potentially could do well enough to do better than Shang-Chi, and hey, Shang-Chi was able to make its money back, even though it cost $50 million less and had an incredible domestic run, especially from pandemic times, whereas this movie is not projected to get anywhere close to the same type of domestic run. But I digress just a little bit there. Let's go ahead and dive in, though, to this update. So Saturday AM update. It says, as of this minute, that Disney's Eternals is still looking to come in at $70 million for the weekend, but the feature could buckle and land in the high $60 million range if it doesn't have a solid Saturday night. And so obviously we'll be finding out tomorrow morning, rather tomorrow around maybe 1 p.m. or so, when the final box office number predictions for the weekend, the projections for the weekend come in. And normally those are pretty reliable. There's usually very little shifting once those Sunday numbers come out. But yeah, Saturday evening is obviously going to be a huge impact and indicator of this. But the fact that they're even suggesting that the film could still very well come in below the $70 million range, which is where they had the film going. Again, they had upwards of $80+ million. Some had even had said $100+ million in some early estimates. Clearly, that is not playing out here. There's still, of course, talk that it could potentially be even Black Widow's opening weekend over the summer. But as I said, they're also now saying, hey, but also it could get into the 60s. So hey, who knows? Maybe it could buckle. It says, for a glossy superstar ensemble with Angelina Jolie, Richard Madden, Kit Harington, Salma Hayek, and Gemma Chan. Star-studded for what period of time in history? About superhero gods, it's not the type of opening we'd come to expect from the MCU. Disney has confidence that the pick will deliver between 70 and 75 million, and so typically you find studios kind of undercutting it. Normally they undercut it so that way when it overperforms, because they have an idea that it could overperform, they can then claim saying, oh, the film's doing so much better, but it's also enough so that they can say, if it gets still within the $70 million range, or if it gets a little bit less than $70 million, that's about what we thought it was going to be anyway. Again, trying to play it both ways in that way. True among Disney-released Marvel titles, Ant-Man ranks as the lowest with $57.5 million opening, and it's possible that Eternals is $5 million shy from Shang-Chi's $75 million three-day. However, the latter was boosted by a 4-day holiday weekend. Boosted, you say? Aren't you the same outlet that was talking all about how Labor Day is the death note for all films that come out, that no films make money? Yes, but now we can say it got boosted by it. Now, before some sector of the Wall Street media writes about cinema's obituary or tries to blame COVID-19, wait a minute, you've been blaming it since the very beginning, Deadline and other media outlets. Come on. Let's provide a wake-up call here. At least I think that they are being somewhat honest, though, in this next take, all right? Because they have been, they're kind of being disingenuous by trying to act as if they have never blamed COVID for any of the films not doing well, or have talked about the film industry not really coming back. But again, I will still give them credit for calling this out. Notice what they're saying here. It's not a shocker to see the number so low on Eternals, and it boils down to the film itself, not the current state of movie going. I think, hey, kudos where kudos are. But hey, you have blamed COVID before, so don't lie there. And you can't blame Disney in any way, shape, or form for not selling Eternals, as its marketing machine was in great shape. Yeah, again, they marketed the hell out of the film. Oscar winner Chloe Zhao delivered a very Byzantine, confusing movie with 10 protagonists that's part of the deeper universe Marvel IP, which is always a box office gamble, but Marvel has typically bucked such risks in the past. That, in addition to being one of the longer origin stories, is the worst reviewed MCU movie of all time, with a 48% on Rotten Tomatoes, and most panned by moviegoers in the Disney MCU, with a B cinema score. All right, let me just put off right there. Cinema score is garbage. Cinema score is not reliable. All that they release is a grade. They don't give you any data. They don't give you any numbers. They don't give you any type of breakdown whatsoever. All they say is, well, according to the people who, hey, yeah, we're not going to ever, say who they are or what cities they're in, or what theaters are being, kind of canvassed the most, and in what areas might likely get some people who are more positive or negative towards a given film. We're never going to give that kind of information out there. We're just going to give you the grade. Trust us. I've never trusted them before. I do trust a little bit more, though, post-track, because they at least give you a better bit of a metric, and they ask, I think, better questions overall. So ComScore, Screen Engine's post-track exits of 77%, meaning that they would encourage people to go see the film. 3.5 stars also from post-track, so again, definitely not a strong showing there, though it seems that some general audiences are having some enjoyment with this film. Obviously, that is not to be that surprising, seeing that it is still an MCU film, and there are still lots of normies out there that like to just, shove popcorn down their mouth and say, ooh, there's images on the screen. It goes on to say, personally, after seeing Eternals, I couldn't even tell you what it's about. They lure you in thinking one of the characters is a villain, and then they're not. And at the end of the day, the payoff isn't as seamless as learning who Kaiser Soze at the end of Usual Suspects. Glad that he brought up what seems to be a much better film. Between reviews and audience exits, these are not the type of results we are used to from Marvel, which typically yields platinum in both areas. From what we know about their sausage-making machine of test screenings with previous MCU filmmakers and the Feige touch, there are usually safeguards in place to prevent such complications from ensuing. It's not clear when it went sideways here. The MCU has a great reputation for catapulting indie filmmakers with a unique voice. Taika Waititi, John Watts. All right, let's just stop right there, because it's like saying, oh, that's never happened before. Let's just remember a little bit about some of the reactions that we got from Black Widow. Let's also remember the reactions that we got from audiences from Captain Marvel. Remember that Rotten Tomatoes actually had to change their entire website because of the film Captain Marvel. So let's just not for a second try and argue that this is just somehow a surprise, that this is the first time that a film has ever done poorly among audiences, or not as well among audiences. And I also love how they're trying to basically cover for the critics here, because they're saying that the audiences hated it too, and yet everything that you've given a B rating, a 77% from post-track, meaning that they would recommend. 77% of audiences coming out of it said, yeah, I would definitely recommend this film to someone, giving it 3.5 stars. You're giving all these metrics that audiences in general seem to actually be enjoying the film, and then kind of glossing over the fact that it's the critics who are hating on this movie for not being a very good movie. So I just find it very interesting that, again, you seem to be trying to shift the blame away from certain people and try and prop up others instead. I just always love and am intrigued by that type of wordsmithing. But the fact that they are still going to be at least honest enough, Anthony's going to be honest enough here to be able to say that the film is to blame. Hey, you're definitely halfway there, because who made the film? It was Marvel. It was Disney. And so therefore they are the ones who ultimately have the blame, because they know that they have been putting cookie cutter nonsense out, especially the last several films, where they've just been putting these machine produced similar tone films out there. And it's just finally caught up with them, because they decided to put out a 2.5 hour plus origin story, thinking it's got MCU on it and it's never let us down before, kind of, forgetting the fact that, oh, wait a minute, we've already had a couple of, films not do very strongly. Obviously, Shang-Chi being able to break even, make a little bit of profit, but again, compared to the rest of the entire films of the entire library of MCU films, not nearly that impressive box office-wise. And I think they're finally starting to realize that even in the midst of pandemic, even in the midst of absolute MCU fatigue, not superhero fatigue, but MCU fatigue, and that's a very specific term there, because it's a type of superhero films and comic book films that come from the MCU that people are starting to get tired of, and I think that is very much being shown here by a film like Eternals. Even so, $70 million is going to be somewhat on par with Shang-Chi. which again went on to make a pretty good domestic opening, but they were targeting very specific audiences there. They don't seem to have the same type of audiences, or at least as clear a vision of audiences that they're going to try to go for with this film. So it's not looking very good, but the fact that the media is seemingly waking up here is still a good sign nonetheless, just in general, because it's good for us to have an honest media. So even though if they're going to kind of, put lies and spins in their articles, at least they're going to be admitting part of the story there. This is from Nancy, another one of the box office covers of Deadline. Says Eternal summons $38 million overseas through Friday, eyeing $80+ million offshore opening weekend international box office. And so if we take the 70 and the 80, that's the reason why they're thinking that this film will get somewhere north of $150 million in the international marketplace by the end of the weekend. However, because it is opening up in many markets all at the same time, and even though that might be somewhat impressive for a pandemic time movie, I think that a lot of people are starting to realize, hey, this thing's got a little bit of a problem going ahead, especially with this thing right here. As it says, in total, Eternals is now out in 46 material offshore markets, repping 93% of the international footprint. It has opened at #1 in all key markets, and while it may be dividing audiences, they are turning up for the first weekend. The projected overseas cume through Sunday is higher than where the industry saw it pre-opening. Legs will be an issue. And that is ultimately where it comes down to. This film is coming out in the vast majority of the markets that are going to be available. Meaning, if this film has a massive drop-off domestically, internationally, and this means also I'll be able to make some projections based off typical standards, that this film is going to have a lot of trouble being able to make its money back. Again, it needs to make $500 million. Shang-Chi couldn't even reach that amount. Black Widow couldn't even reach that amount. And some people might say, yeah, but Disney, you got to take into account the Disney Plus numbers for Black Widow. You also now have to take into account the amount of money that they paid off to Scarlett Johansson, which even though you might try and argue, well, you can't really do that. Well, yes, you can. She was directly attached to that film. They had to pay her a certain amount of money, and so therefore her being attached to that film and the lawsuit being about that film, I would say it's totally fair to take that money out of it. And so that kind of throws into the discussion about whether or not Black Widow was profitable or not, especially since you can't rely as much nearly on those Disney Plus numbers or those supposed Disney Plus numbers. There's still a lot of questions there too. This won't have that though. Everything will be out in the open, opening weekend, second weekend. So this is going to be a movie that we're going to be seeing very clearly. We will know by next weekend what kind of film this is going to be. Unlike some of the other films that have come out this year where they've had, again, a very staggered release, where films like Dune, for instance, where it's been very difficult to track over time, even though it does seem to have, at least the box office for Dune seems to have the writing on the wall for that film because of the amount of money that film needs to be able to make back, around $412 million or so. Again, I guess you could say it's still theoretically possible, but realistically just not so much. Whereas this film, if it gets to $150 million and then sees a 50% drop worldwide by next weekend, you're looking at a film that's going to be then crossing $225 or so million worldwide. And then you start to see the perpetual drop off. And so you're looking at a film that, hey, maybe it can reach the levels of a film like Black Widow, or maybe it could even reach the levels of a film like Shang-Chi, which would then put it between 375 and around 450, well below the 500 minimum it needs to break even. And that 500 is not including any extra marketing cost. It's not including any production cost. It's not including any interest that they may have had to build up on delaying this film. All of those things, right, could easily raise that number. Even the most conservative estimate, though, does not look very good for this film. At the very least, the media seems to be waking up, right? Legs going to be a problem for this movie. And as he himself even says it in here, right, it's about the film itself not being well received, obviously, among critics, and also continuing to spin that the audiences apparently are not liking it either. In comparison to other Marvel films, I will obviously point that out, but still, this post-track number, a 3.5 stars, 77%, that is definitely a high enough number to get good enough word of mouth out there, but how many people are going to be willing to go and see a 2.5-hour film that's going to be getting some mixed reactions from some people? It's going to be a little hard to find. Again, I look to places like, for instance, Metacritic to find a little bit of a better overall metric of the film, and that is also around in the 50s or 60s for both critics and audiences. And so I think that's showing more so how mixed this film it really is, not just among critics, but also amongst audiences as well. And so that's the reason why I'm very confident that as of tomorrow, we'll have again, opening weekend. They're saying $150 million, so that's the standard. How below the $150 million does it get? or how above the 150 million does it get? And as I always say, what's that second weekend drop off? And with 93%, as it even says, 93% of all of the markets that could be available will be available as of this weekend, we'll be able to tell a great deal both this and next weekend. But let me know your thoughts about this. Do you think that Eternals is going to reach the $150 million that it's expected to make? Or do you think that it might stumble? Again, some of these experts are claiming that there's a chance that it could stumble if it doesn't do well tonight. Obviously, if there's other stuff going on tonight that will probably, change some things there, right? That will probably have some impact. But obviously, all excuses are on the table. Let me know your thoughts about this and anything else I mentioned in the comment section below. Like this video, smash that like button, laugh that fire button, and also smash the rumble button. You're all amazing, beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my November Patreon, Subscribestar, and Locals members. Starting first off with Patreon, Andrew Hoyle, animation commentator, Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Dolores Ed, Dion, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father. Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob the Juice, JC, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyle 79, Laura the Modern Major General Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ullen, Stan Andrian, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. And a shout out to my Subscribestar members, UAB, Mad Dog, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stan 4, John B, Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J, Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, and J Rod, the Beer Guru, and of course, ZK Man. Thank you very much for supporting me over there. And to my 3 supporters over on locals.com, Kara Tharp, Bifford a Hobbit, and Robert Barnes. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and every video I do on the channel, check out that top link in the description below to find out how to sign up to the various levels that exist, including the most basic level where you get a shout out, the secondary level, the Army of Asgard, where you get that, plus access to a giveaways exclusive server where I give away things like 4Ks and Blu-rays and digital codes. All kinds of stuff, a lot of fun. You then also have the Keeper of the Bifrost level where you get all that stuff, plus access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. You get to ask us questions, and you get also access to that and the entire library of podcast episodes that we have done. And then there is, of course, the Chosen of Valhalla level, where not only do you get all of that, but also in your first month, you get a t-shirt of your choice and sent to you anywhere in the world. Of course, just let me know your size and the color option that you want. It'll be sent to you that first month. And also, you get to be featured on the once a month Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where we have a ton of fun talking about movies and projects and all kinds of stuff. Pretty much anything that the Chosen wants to talk about is on the table. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check out that top link. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.